Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for this PrintPulse Live webinar, What Real Automation Deployment Looks Like in Print. I'm your host, Lee Eldridge. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, I'm a researcher and educator at Toronto Metropolitan University previously known as Ryerson. I'm a member of the board of directors of the OPIA, and I work in graphic communications and digital design, especially with a focus on AI in creative and print environments. Today, we are, of course, joined by Marc Raad and Michael Dequilla from Significans Automation, who will be sharing some insights of real automation deployments in print, packaging, and graphics companies. Not just theoreticals, but actual down and dirty lessons learned from their vast experience working with different print service providers and packaging manufacturers around this topic. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Much, yeah.
PrintPulse Live is, of course, managed and arranged by the Ontario Printing and Imaging Association, the OPIA, which works to empower the print and graphic communication industry and is a foundational member of the National Professional Association, the CPIA, the Canadian Print Industries Association. So whether it's advocating for the print industry with government or providing tools and resources and training for industry, the OPIA and the CPIA work to kind of improve the conditions for everyone working in print, packaging, graphics, and allied industries here. Before we get started, while most of folks like myself are volunteers of the OPIA, the organization is funded primarily by our wonderful member companies and organizations, and of course our annual OPIA Golf Classic, which is coming up in this September. So the OPIA Golf Classic is an annual event where you can spend the day on the greens with print and graphic industry leaders. It's a great way and a great reason to get out of the office and connect with community and with vendors. Registration is open now for members and non-members to participate. You can register as either a foursome or individually for the day of golf, as well as lunch and dinner. And sponsorship opportunities are also available for those that want to use this as an opportunity to connect with kind of a wide variety of industry leaders here in Ontario. But in this series, we've had a few sessions earlier this year talking about AI tools and agentic AI, which I'm sure is going to come up in this session as well. But I'm always particularly interested in the kind of the practicality of implementation over just the theory of how we might be able to do something. And that's what this session is really about, kind of a reality check between theory and execution, the actual implementation and the deployment, not just AI, of course, but that's one possible tool, but the whole system for automation and the various tools that support it. There's a quote that I love about this, and it's one of those quotes that it gets attributed to all sorts of different people, Albert Einstein and Yogi Berra and Thomas Edison even, and we're not really sure who said it first, but it's that there is no difference between theory and practice in theory, but there's often a great deal of difference between theory and practice in practice. And I think that those of you that have tried to put automation theories into practice have no doubt experienced this kind of gap here, which is why I like this quote so much. So for this session, we wanted to make sure that we were grounding this all in practice. And I can't think of anyone better to really guide us than Marc and Michael from Significans on the call. Their day-to-day is all about automation in print, packaging, brand management from a vendor neutral perspective. That is, how to combine the tools you already have with options you can bring in that will help to achieve your workflow automation goals. And with the experience, the practice to really back it up. These guys are like the special forces of graphic automation consultants. Marc had an amazing career at top technology companies like HP Indigo and Esco prior to this. Michael has been working in print and prepress pretty much since he could walk, maybe before that. I remember meeting Michael and his brother Bernard, probably 20 years ago now, through their father, Bernardo Dequilla, who has been in the Ontario print community for decades. And I remember very specifically that we were, for some reason, moving some tables in our prepress department, and I am an absolute weakling and could not move the tables, and Michael and Bernard came and just like lifted the table, no problem whatsoever, and moved it across the room and made me feel quite inferior to these teens that were kind of showing me up. But
fitness is definitely not automatic. Yeah.
What's that, sorry?
I said fitness is not automatic.
No, fitness is certainly not for me, man. I struggle. They're going to talk about some of the things that they have learned along the way in their professional career, and helping us on the call kind of better understand some of the opportunities and the challenges that we might face working on our own projects. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them and let them get into the details here. I'll be monitoring the chat if there's any questions, and we'll have a few minutes at the end of the session as well for questions you might have in the group. So Marc, Michael, over to you.
That was a really nice intro, Lee. Thank you very much.
Well, no problem.
Gets set and puts this in the presentation mode. I just wanted to extend our gratitude to be here. Lovely to be amongst our peers here in the industry this afternoon.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Lee, and thank you for everyone joining the call today. My name is Michael Dequilla. I am the Client Impact Manager at Significans Automation, and I'm joined by our President, Marc Raad. We're excited to lead this conversation with OPI because we sit at the business system level across the entire orchestration layer, and that view is what differentiates the insights we're about to share with you guys today. So we're excited about it. Lee did touch on this, and Lee, really that was a fantastic introduction. I don't know who could beat that. But our company was founded in 2018. Marc saw something that the rest of the industry hadn't named yet, because software was flooding the market, and with it came complexity that operations weren't equipped to navigate alone. The idea was simple, and that was to create an easy button for integrated workflow automation, vendor neutral, built around your business. Since then, we've grown to become the largest of our kind in the Americas, and we transcend print, packaging, and brands. We also develop a lot of software for the InFocus ecosystem to fill gaps, and our team is a think tank of strategists, solutions architects, and developers, every one of us with shop floor experience of over 400 years. And this is our agenda for today. We wanted to walk through this just like it was a customer journey. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we'll cover discovery to deployment to the execution culture that holds everything together. We'll speak on a journey and the stories of our case studies, followed by our Q&A. And that really is the part that Marc and I love to engage in over here. So let's get started. Discovery. What is it that leads to automation? Why does anyone decide to pick up the phone and call us? There's one thing. Change. Change is the trigger. Every engagement starts with that. And in our experience, what we see is it's almost an even split between proactive businesses and reactive businesses. The proactive ones, they want a competitive advantage. They see what's coming and they want to be ahead of it. The reactive ones, maybe something happened. A key person left, the process broke, the technology is not holding up anymore, or a competitor just got faster. Either way, the destination is the same. It's that change is inevitable, but the main goal is to be ready for it. Hesitation is never just a technology conversation. It's the operator who knows it's time to automate, but can't get the owner to commit. It's the owner who's ready, but the team won't let go of their old ways. It's a 25-year veteran who holds everything in their head. That's tribal knowledge, and they're getting ready to retire. It's previous software or tech implementations that didn't stick. It's staff who feel threatened instead of feeling empowered. That's what causes projects to stall, decisions to get deferred, and eventually, after some pain sets in, that's when we get the phone call. The conversation starts again. But ready or not, that's the work that we do. That's our wheelhouse, and we're here to help. The difference between being proactive and reactive is really just how much runway you have to plan, phase, and bring your people along with you. The most common and opening lines in our discovery calls isn't about budget, timeline, or technology, surprisingly. It's about what is possible. The exact phrasing we hear is, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, so tell us about it. What is possible? It's a good question, and I want to answer that for you. I want to describe the possibility in a way that clarifies what we're even talking about here, and that's automation and integration. Automation removes the work, integration removes the walls. Automation is really just removing manual steps from your workflow. In print, this word gets attached to prepress or equipment and stops there, but it's much more than that. If you look at the icons at the bottom of this slide, these really represent all the tasks, the departments, but also the silos. But there's a lot of task-driven software that exists to eliminate significant manual work, from intake to routing to pre-flight, proofing, all the way down to billing. But most of this still requires some sort of human trigger, a handoff, or someone watching the queues. And the greatest possibility that we're looking at is integration. That's connecting your systems end to end. It's data-driven, it utilizes APIs, webhooks, data exchange from your MIS to web to print. That possibilities that we're building towards is full integration. One trigger and one data source connecting the entire chain to run with speed, accuracy, and consistency. It's also important to note connectivity when purchasing systems. So it's important that you ask how easy it is to connect to the system and what does it cost to. Because a system that can't talk to the rest of your stack isn't an asset, it can be seen as an island, as part of an automation structure. Something very common that we also see is most shops sitting on underutilized technology, and Lee did call this out at the beginning, and it was a good note. Before we ever talk about new software, we want to make sure you're getting everything out of what you already own. New platforms only enter the conversation when your current system doesn't have the capabilities to get you further. Our methodology is simplified for you to utilize what you have, customize it for your operation, optimize for results, then maximize that investment over time. The biggest takeaway from this discovery stage is identifying where you are to be able to plan where you want to be. And that brings us to strategy. And how do we strategize these things? We don't just deliver out of the box. Your business is unique, so your plan should be customized to your business. I was happy to throw this diagram up because I love to hear the passion that Marc has when he's speaking about this. It's at the core of our strategy when working with our customers. And really that's to align all these things, your vision, your people, process, and your systems. And it's the vision of the business owners or your operation that really drives your process, systems, and people. And we build at the orchestration layer to make sure it stays intact. Defining your vision is in your business is crucial to aligning everything around you. This just touches on that previous diagram. Most implementations don't fail because the technology didn't work. They fail because nobody managed the people side of it. Owners want efficiency. CSRs tend to keep wanting to touch jobs. Prepress wants to stay relevant, and nobody's wrong for that. But if you don't get in the same room defining the same future, it's difficult to get off the ground. When people help shape that change, they develop ownership of it. Change done with your people outperforms change done to them every time. And to mitigate for that, buying more equipment, software, and hiring staff is often just adding to that chaos. Alignment is important, but once that's set, the next question is always, how do we even start? How do we get to it? And the way I could describe this is 3 engagement levels, and this really does cover the span of customers coming to us to speak about automation. And the first one is the formal assessment. That is the greatest success that we see with our clients, because this is where we capture the current state, we design a future state, and deliver an assessment report with ROI. That allows our clients to leave with a roadmap regardless of what happens next. The next tier to that is an on-site audit where we go deeper. We'll spend a few days and work directly with your team and your processes to get a real picture of what's actually happening on your floor, not what the organizational chart says is happening. And the final deliverable of that is just a more advanced and robust formal assessment from the audit that we just ran. The last engagement that I'd like to speak on is what we call our statement of work, or an SOW engagement. This is for organizations with established processes looking to streamline specific and defined projects. And all of the project scopes vary, and you'd be surprised because we're lucky to meet up to upwards to 5 to 10 new businesses a week. And some clients need a focused pre-flight or in-position build. Others need hour blocks reserved to support experienced internal teams on complex integrations. Some need full end-to-end design and implementation. Others need foundational software training from user level all the way through to builder. And that's what we're able to provide. So what happens next? Clients receive the reports, ROI and pricing. This is it. We work in Agile, so we plan in phases, not because it's easier to sell, because it's smarter to execute. We want to create visible wins to build champions inside the building so that your people start saying, this is working before we finish building it. Phases give your team time to adapt, absorb, and build confidence before the next layer lands. And sometimes we have to break those phases down into sprints to earn those quick visible wins. And that is also to build champions inside the building. Most people move through shock, frustration, and skepticism before advocacy, and phasing maps to that curve. ROI before the next commitment is how organizational will stays alive. And speaking of ROI, everything that we do gets measured against one standard: return on investment. If we can't show a credible path to return, we won't recommend it. Every circle on this diagram represents something that's currently costing you in money, time savings, error reduction, effective management, reduced skills-based operations, better customer experience, from collaboration to compliance and speed to market. Integration is what unlocks all of this simultaneously, and the strategies to improve from your current reality bring visibility to the choice of moving ahead. Deployment is when we take your vision and bring it to fruition. We talked earlier about the possibilities, but here's a deeper dive in how we deploy that in your business. Lights out automation. This is really the goal of every deployment. This is what I described earlier as integration. Web to print and POD automation are the clearest real-world examples of this. Your files and data come in clean and standardized. Logic gets built in, jobs move through production with no human interaction or touches. The front end disciplines the input, the back end just runs. Standardized data intake drives your full production chain automatically. But we also know production and understand that it's not perfect. Oftentimes you can't control the input, and for those scenarios, we deploy an 80-20 strategy. Automation owns the predictable, your people own the exceptions. And the idea behind this is that roughly 80% of your volume is repeat predictable work. It's the same job types, the same specs, and same routing. This is exactly what automation was built for. You let the system own that completely, and your most experienced people stop doing work they could do in their sleep and start focusing on complex, high margin, and high judgment work that actually needs them. That's not replacing anyone that is finally deploying your best people correctly. But really, whether we deploy either or both in the same organization, we need to deploy on a solid foundation. Now, it's important to understand what's happening, the hows and the whys. Gaining clarity and confidence in these deployments should be top of mind. And this is how we achieve that: to deploy with clarity and confidence. Oftentimes we work with other vendors to connect your systems to your network, so you're not alone in having to play third party and broken telephone here. We engage and test with clients on each task deliverable. Every piece of the build is confirmed, useful, and adopted before we move to the next one. And really, this is my role as the client impact manager, ensuring build meets the vision so teams don't just see change, they feel it working. Change doesn't become sustainable in the new way until the new way becomes the normal way. Deployment is the beginning of that process, not the end of the project. And that brings us to execution culture. What makes this all stick? What prepares you for what's coming next? I've kept this section short because the answer is very simple. Structure and culture have to move together. Leadership is what moves them together. Creating a culture around continuous improvement, communicating with transparency, acting with intention, and defining the vision for everyone. World-class systems fail in cultures that don't evolve every time, because you really just cannot automate your way out of misalignment. Now, we talked about discovery through deployment and what sustains it all. But before we get to these case studies, I want to share something, because the story I'm about to tell you shows up in some form in almost every business we talk to. It's the people part of it all, and how championing change, especially in this case, automation, is the difference between being someone it happened to and someone who made it happen. And this is a story of my career. Lee just talked about this earlier, that I started in this over 20 years ago, and it did feel like I almost started since I was crawling. But in my career, I faced change at every level, and every time I had to make a choice to champion it or let it pass me by. Right? I worked in each of these roles, and many of you on this call may be living it, but at each level, there is a desire to be impactful in the role, and that's really what is able to drive this to the next level. So as a graphic designer in that role, lots of times the challenge may not be said out loud, but it is really finding that you may not understand how your work affects the production downstream. And really, this is just the beginning of automation and change for you. And for me, it was finding the discipline in colors and standards and specifications. And through that, errors were able to drop and cycles shortened. And it's really just that consistency is at the source of everything. So for every designer that doesn't think their work impacts production, your print-ready PDFs are actually the key to seamless automation. It's that and data. So really, it's powerful in the front end what a designer is able to do, and you have that in you. Everything up top, intake affects the output. In a prepress operator role, I was also skeptical with my peers. We didn't believe automation could solve everything, and we would sit for hours at a time and really just try to pick apart what automation really couldn't solve for our business. But there was technology coming along, and we want to implement those things to make our days easier. So that we started to take on batch processing, hot folders, and utilizing PitStop Pro on a user level. And suddenly that skepticism became eventually what we were calling the 80-20 insight, and realizing that it didn't need to solve everything. And through that, our output pulled ahead, not by working harder, but automating that predictable work. In the role of a prepress supervisor, especially if you're a working supervisor, it's easy to get caught in the work where your days are full of fixing and just guiding your staff. At this point, I still have senior operators that are hesitant to adopt, but they're still very highly valued because of their skill set. But what I found was standardizing the process made automation trustworthy, because we weren't just launching it with a hope and prayer. We're standardizing everything around it so that we understood what was going in and we understood what was coming out. And from that, I was able to focus energy on newer staff, and the time savings from that created capacity. Capacity became more responsibility. Others started to take notice of that, and we started to gain buy-in from this. In the role when I was running two departments as a prepress and digital manager, although, and this may be rare, of one person running two departments, this really just speaks on whether or not there are multiple departments in a building, and you might still find those silos happening down there. And the reason why I touch on this is really just talking about how to break down that silo to build a seamless flow. So really, I'm dealing with two groups there with two different mentalities and skill set, but working towards the same goal in client satisfaction. And from here, there's a lot of production errors happening, and this starts to begin root cause work of where this may be coming from. Because I'm thinking that maybe I standardized everything that I had to up front, so why are there still errors happening in the background? So again, the outcome from that is really just breaking down those silos, because I had nothing in my way. I saw how file setup affected the presses and vice versa, and you start to go to both groups and really start to tie down the processes so that we have that seamless flow. I automated one-touch workflows from CSR to press-ready output, and that success became proof. Proof creates permission to go further. And that starts to touch on the interdepartmental work. How can we now start bringing this to the CSRs, to the estimating departments? How can we bring this into the litho department? And maybe how can we get the shipping information down better, or start to work at these large mailing campaigns that are happening. From here, this is where I stopped adapting to change and started driving it. And lastly, as an operations manager, this is the leadership that really needs to drive everything. The challenges that I had back then are the ones that are still holding true now. And we start to see this as, the something that defers what automation or advancements to innovation that your company can have. And that was having a skills gap with my staff, or staff leaving, and then feeling that that's where most of the concentration needs to go. But really championing automation at this level didn't just improve the workflows, it freed me as a leader. It gave me room to lead, to be mentored by those before me, and to think about the business instead of running inside of it. And my vision for orchestration was able to advance that program. I developed onboard training, improved recruitment and retention. So really that's just a little bit of a story of being able to look at these challenges in front of you and taking on something like automation and change. I've seen what resistance looks like, but like many others, instead of avoiding change, I embraced it. If this is familiar to anyone on this call or anyone that that struggles with it, there's another side to it, and it is fulfilling, really. And that brings me to our case studies. These are the stories of our clients who are faced with change and champion automation to see their visions through. And here I'm going to hand this to Marc because he talks so passionately about it.
Well, that was a very authentic presentation, Michael. Thank you for that. Well, to talk about case studies is really to talk about real people and real world outcomes at the end of the day. And we've been really, really privileged to do business both in Canada and the US and now in Europe as well. And I'd like you to move to the next slide so we can sort of highlight where we've done business and where we've been able to highlight some of the customers that we've done the privilege for. So over 250, closer to 300 customers have entered into projects with us, varying projects. Everything's a one-off for us. Everything's custom to the customer. And ultimately what we're trying to do is build an ecosystem that's worthy of their involvement and their future, not an ecosystem that's centered around a single software source, of course. And then, having said that, all these customers that have allowed us to put their name up here on the maps have generated a return on investment, and that's really our measurement at the end of the day. We're going to sort of highlight on the next page a grouping, a very, very small grouping, so that we can open it up to more dialogue at the end of our presentation. And I'm highlighting some names here that might be familiar to some people here on the call. But more importantly, if we focus on the red subheading underneath the name of the company, what we've given back in the engagement has been quite significant, from Speed Pro going from 10 clicks to 1 click, to Allegra creating an area or an ecosystem of 300% efficiency gains, to Wallace having reduced huge amount of hours in their day-to-day. And ultimately, we did approach every engagement with huge levels of automation, where we were controlling and manipulating the data so that it would be the trigger point for more automation. And ultimately, what we also implemented over the course of time were the strategies that we outlined for AI implementation. And this is near and dear to Lee's heart, but also a number of the members here on the call. Next slide, please. I want to focus on one particular customer here called Workhouse Signs. They're based down in Pennsylvania. Very unique business because they have basically a fulfillment business for their online customers, which include Amazon, Etsy, eBay, Walmart, etc., where they have millions of different designs for signage that has been basically designed by them, but set as a standard through these various programs. And what's unique about this business is that it is a family-run business. It's 8 people in total running this business. And today I'm excited to tell you that they're fully automated, lights out kind of scenario. But more importantly, they came to us. And when they came to us, they weren't they weren't able to fulfill all the work that was hitting them. So they were arriving at capacity points. They were seen in their business. So we sort of highlight that on the next page where we're talking about their challenge. And the owner had explained it to me, whereby he said, look, I can't sustain the business and grow with more and more people here. I've got to take advantage of computing. I've got to take advantage of systems. I got to take advantage of everything that's hit us. And I know we have a great white paper to design from. And sure enough, Michael and the team designed an incredible opportunity around their business, whereby we automated what was coming in, we categorized what was coming in, and through an AI app that we created, was able to basically categorize and segregate all the work so that it would be easier for the systems to pick up and then process, and then go through an AI imposition solution, and then out to output and digital finishing. That whole process shaved them incredible amounts of hours that we're highlighting on the next page, which is really the results of recovery of over 160 hours of work per week. And really the big thing here is the third check mark there, and that was creating automation processes which removed 3,024 hours of job processing down to 6 hours in total. And that couldn't have happened without them, workout signs, earning their badge around having AI and AI implementations in their business. So hopefully what we've shown is authentic, but more importantly is the lead up to more conversation. We're open to it. We have conversations all the time with all sorts of ports throughout North America and Europe. And I'd like to highlight a couple of things. When I started the business, it was pretty novel back then. And I'd had to go out and explain to people that it was, this isn't automation that comes from a tree or gets designed by someone in the back of an office that's quite introverted and just keying at a faster pace than maybe me and Michael can have a conversation at. This really is a design and build based upon what the customer delivers us, and therefore it becomes a very trustworthy engagement. We reverse engineer, we digitize everything so that it, again, becomes part of the culture and the adaptation and the adoption process through and through the business. So really, at the end of the day, we can say definitively in 2026 that automation is a trustworthy adventure journey, but more importantly, it's an investment that's quite mandatory on the businesses today. And so for that, I'd like Lee to take the mic and see if there's any questions from the audience that he'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, let me get my share up there. There we go. All right. Thanks so much, guys. And I love that you focused so much on that change management piece, which I think is so crucial on all of this, that, it's not just managing the technology, it's also managing the people and the buy-in and the I've certainly seen what you were talking about, Michael, in pre-press departments, where you've got someone who just wants to do everything they can to say why it won't work, rather than focusing on the parts that will work, at least in a kind of a majority of the time. If you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I had a few sent to me kind of by private message here. One of them was that is there any area that you find, obviously every company is very diverse and very different, has different needs. You talked about the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle, that, there is a certain group that kind of applies to most circumstance. Is there any kind of low-hanging fruit that you encounter over and over again with your different clients that you kind of say, like, this is a good area to be looking at first?
Mm-hmm.
Michael's smiling at me, thinking I should answer that. But
No,
Michael, you go ahead. This is not very formal that way, so go ahead.
No, I could definitely take that. And one of the easiest low-hanging fruit that we see, and you might be surprised about that, but it really is pre-flight strategies, right? So, just to look at many of the organizations that we come around, there's so much technology out there different methods of pre-flight, and you know, we start to come to these conversations where clients are asking us, you know, where do they implement pre-flight, at what stage of it do they implement it, and how do they do it exactly, right? So I think for us, many of the clients that are coming, really that's an easy place for us to start right away, because we are assessing the entire business from front to end, and really just finding the greatest ROI that they can have. But that is a strategy that we can implement quite easily to give them the quickest return on investment, to stop having to manually touch every single file that comes through.
Right, and like you said, if you can show that ROI, then you can get more buy-in from other people in the organization, and sort of extend that goodwill towards other aspects that might not be quite as straightforward, I imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. And Lee, let's also face the reality. There's a lot of companies that have gone the way of e-commerce and web and print. That's an area that's absolutely huge for diversification purposes, or mostly for standardization. So when you talk about low-hanging fruit, those companies that have gone the way of e-commerce and they haven't automated that portion on the back end, because that's a standard or a template that they can create and follow in terms of a pre-press process or in terms of a production process, then they should speak to a company like ours to help them automate those processes.
And so if pre-flight is perhaps the easy win, low-hanging fruit that can probably help most organizations, I've got a question in the chat here. What do you think the largest automation opportunity is from an overall ROI impact once it's implemented at the end of the day? Is there an area that you think that, like if you take those extra steps is really going to change how things flow?
Really, I think that Mark just kind of touched on that, and I'll let him expand, and that is the integration portion, right?
Yeah.
So you could come in and on many levels and automate all these separate pieces, but that is really what gets you the most ROI. Mark did just speak about workhouse signs over there, and you know, that's the operator with staff having to go on vacation and leaving, and he's just coming in without knowing much about the processes, hitting one button and allowing his entire operation to work, and that's really the biggest ROI that we can get, is integration at that.
Right, is that end-to-end kind of final integration.
Connecting your systems.
Right.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I'm sorry I didn't touch on that while I was speaking. And it's hard to believe that sometimes I'll call the owner over at Workhouse Signs, and he doesn't have any staff that have showed up for the day because basically the automation is kicked in, and I go, well, are you showing up tomorrow? He says, well, maybe, but they're family, so now this is running in automation, and so they don't really need to show up on a day-to-day basis, and that was the way we designed their business with automation and their initiatives. But it doesn't have to be like that for everyone. So we're not scaring people out there that this is going to be replacing people. It really serves as an aid, and in some cases the way we position it sometimes to pre-press or pre-press managers is that, you know, your employer is going to basically give you an education that you'd have to go and get 4 years of education around. Do you have that time and that ability at this point? Most people don't know. So why not become the control tower manager and see all that manipulation of automation that's going through the systems on a minute-by-minute basis? And then if something goes foul, you have the aptitude and skill sets to deal with it.
Right.
Or-
It's that kind of idea that, you might not your job might not be replaced by AI, but it might be replaced by someone that knows how to use AI very well and automation very well.
There you go. Yes, there you go. Well said.
Yeah, that becomes the key to really championing it, right? And I think, as people try to run from technology, it's like, these things are powerful, and in your advancements, as you learn how to wield these, then that's really just your power, right? So.
Right. When it comes to the scoping phase, if I were someone looking to engage with a company like Significans to start building out my automation process, and I wanted to kind of give my executives, an assessment of a timeline, what are you generally, recommending based on how long it takes to kind of evaluate, do that first pass through, and then the scope of work and that type of thing?
You want me to go?
I have Mark.
Yeah, I'll go. So if it is a virtual assessment, we ask for about 3 hours of time from the customer. And these are 3 hours of non-consecutive hours that we ask from the customer. It starts up with, 50 questions followed by an alignment meeting on what is current state. So Michael and the team can draw out what a current state now looks like, followed by another hour of aligning on what is future state once we circle the wagons with our dev team. And then we break it down into phases for the customer. So all in all, we're about 2.5 hours in without doing an ROI study. So the final half hour is to do an ROI study so we can bring justification to such a project, or a relief, as Michael said. Why don't we just do a relief point? And that relief point could be a pain point like pre-flighting or imposition or whatever have you, and we can do a study specific to that sort of thing. So those are the virtual assessments that we normally do. Once that's done, we like to make sure that we're the ones who actually win the opportunity to do the business. We've studied how to do it. We've given them the recipe. We have the recipe. We have the formula. And once we do get engaged, it's usually about 2 to 3 weeks later that we do get an engagement. And from there, the anomaly becomes, what are we doing for the customer? So I can't tell you if the project is going to take weeks, hours, months, or a year sort of thing. But we have everything in between that we've done for our customers. And what's interesting is that, again, whether it's a couple of hours or it's a couple of days long, we always make sure that we start off with an alignment of what is the potential here, and then assess what is the return on investment brought to you from this type of engagement.
Right.
Yeah, and again, Lee, it's as we work in Agile, we're not just waiting until everything's done all at once to deliver months later. We're really building and we're delivering as we go, and we're having testing per each round so that our customers can see ROI quickly.
And if they have to buy software, sorry, I'm going to add one more point to Michael's point there. If they have to buy software, they can buy it from us, they can buy it from other vendors. We try and make sure, though, that they're giving them an ROI on that software in 30 days. So we're giving them a minimal viable opportunity to get the adoption of that investment software right from.
And when you're doing the assessment, I mean, you'd mentioned how critical that ROI piece is. Is there, and this is from the chat as well, is there a typical ROI for an automation project? Is there like a ballpark that you kind of give, again, when you're talking to that top level executive as to what they're going to gain out of it? Or is it very much dependent on the situation?
Every culture, every company, every language spoken in that company is different. So it's varied. It is definitely a one-off project for every engagement.
Yeah. Because the importance is really capturing the current state as is, and that's the only thing that we can really drive towards that ROI, and to show how much time we're saving or how much money we can free up from there.
And this is just a question from me. I mean, obviously you guys are knee deep in this stuff all the time, but your actual role, like you said, is very bespoke. It's very specific to the individual. How much automation do you end up putting in your own workflows?
Not enough.
Not enough.
We're like the ER for pre-press, as you indicated in your introduction. We wish we were a lot more automated ourselves. Now, we are embarking, we do have a dev team, and the reason why I have a preceding airline is because it is quite an investment to have a dev team and then, of course, a workflow development team on the side. But that dev team is helping us design the future. That is, what does our future look like in the industry? How do we automate more? How do we increase our capacity to be in a lot more places? So stay tuned for that, Lee. We have some exciting news coming up, and in the fall that we're announcing for Print United.
And Lee, in terms of our technical portion over here, I said, I think whoever's not utilizing AI just a little bit to make their days easier, it's 2026, so you need to, you need to get with the time. So all of us do utilize it in some form or manner, but really, I think where we're coming from is speaking on what our business as a whole, and us having industry experience, right? So we don't want to just throw out slop out there and just say, well, someone gave us something, we're going to run it through AI and just deliver it to them. I said, no, we're really pulling from our own experiences and our own knowledge behind these things to be able to deliver. And no matter what, that does require our human touch to go in there and make sure that we're delivering to the plans that we're supposed to be.
Right. I want to dispel the myth. We're not building people's workflows from an AI model. It's definitely not like that at all. Besides, we got to be uber careful of people's data, their environments, it's all sovereign to them, and we have to be very, very respectful of it. So we've adopted some governance around how we do our business. Besides, all of my staff work for us full time. We don't outsource the work. We don't succumb to using developing areas of the world so that we can get things done cheaper. That's just not our model. We make sure that we are servicing customers in their appropriate time zones with the staff that have excelled, and we've been so lucky to hire the best in the industry.
Right. And yeah, that is so critical right now, especially with all of the kind of rogue internal use of different tools and the data leaking that is happening in every sort of organization right now, just because of that lack of governance or internal policy in a lot of cases. I mean, it's not intentionally malicious, but if you're sharing your customer data, client information, quote, materials to Gemini or Claude or whatever, that's a vulnerability that I think a lot of organizations haven't yet really grappled with yet, and there's going to be a reckoning sooner or later around it, which we'll see where that goes. Well, thanks so much, guys. That's all the questions in the chat. I'm going to put up the contact information for Marc and Michael up on screen here. You can connect with them on LinkedIn. You can email them. If you do have other questions, if you have things that are more specific to your own environment and you want to get some feedback or response, I'm sure that they would be happy to have a quick chat with you offline to talk more about it. And of course, you can go to significance.com and find out more about their specific service offerings, some of the other automation implementations that they have put in, and what else you might be looking at when it comes to this kind of stuff. If you like what we're doing with this series, if you want to support the OPIA directly, please consider becoming a member. We're welcoming new members in 2026 with a 50% reduction in membership fees for the first year. You can find more information about that at ontarioprinting.org. And again, if you're a golfer and don't forget to get yourself registered for the OPIA Golf Classic in September. So details and registration also at ontarioprinting.org. Whether you want to come with a foursome or individually, both are available, as well as sponsorship opportunities if needed. You can always reach out to myself as well and the PrintPulse Live crew. We have some great sessions coming up later in this year, but if you've got an idea for a talk, either one you'd love to see us cover or hold, or one you'd like to give, please connect with me. I'd love to hear from you and find out what would make an impact in your business. But with that, I really appreciate Marc, Michael, thank you for sharing all the great knowledge with us. Everyone else, thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedule. We'll be posting a recording of this session online if you want to revisit anything. And of course, you can reach out to myself, Marc, Michael, anyone on the team here with specific questions, and I'm sure they'll be able to help you out. Have a lovely, sunny rest of your day and a great rest of the week. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.